Today in geometry, we are going to use coordinate proofs to determine the type of parallelogram that we are given. Now, a couple things to review. Trapezoids have one pair of parallel sides. Parallelograms have two pairs of parallel sides. Now, we're going to be using the slope of lines to determine what type of parallelogram we have, so we have to remember that slopes of parallel lines are the same. Now, rectangles have perpendicular sides. Rhombi have perpendicular diagonals. And squares have both perpendicular sides and diagonals. And recall that the slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. And to find the slope of a line, we use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in example number 1, we need to determine how best to classify the following quadrilateral using the slopes of the sides and diagonals. Now, first thing I like to do is take my coordinate points, and I like to put them on a coordinate plane. So I had 4 points, A, B, C, and D. So the first thing that I did was plotted my points A, B, C, and D and sketched my parallelogram. Now, once I have my sketch, I can see what my 4 sides are. I have side AB, side BC, side CD, and side DA. So I found the slope of each side. So for side AB, I used my coordinate points A and B, and I found the slope. 5 minus 2 divided by 2 minus 1, and I found the slope to be 3. Okay, and then I continued finding the slope of each of the 3 remaining sides using the 4 given points. Now, if you look at my picture, the slope of sides BC and AD are 2/3. Okay, because those slopes are the same, it tells me those 2 lines are parallel to each other. Now, side AB and side CD also had the same slope, so I know those 2 sides are parallel to each other as well. So I have a parallelogram because I have 2 pair of parallel sides. Now, I need to determine if I have just a parallelogram or if it's a special parallelogram, a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. Now, I can go ahead and eliminate that this figure is a rectangle or a square because I know rectangles and squares have 4 right angles, and which means the 2 sides are going to be perpendicular to each other. Now, if I look at 2 consecutive sides, side AB has a slope of 3, and side AD has a slope of 2/3. Those are not opposite reciprocals, and therefore they cannot be perpendicular. So that means I'm trying to determine if I have just a regular parallelogram or if I have a rhombus. Now, in order to determine if it's a parallelogram or a rhombus, I need to find the slopes of the diagonals. My diagonals are AC and BD. Now, in a rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular. So I'm going to check to determine if the slopes of the diagonals are opposite reciprocals. So I find the slope of AC, and I find the slope of BD, the 2 diagonals, and they are not opposite reciprocals. And since the diagonals are not perpendicular, okay, this figure must be a parallelogram. Now, I would like for you to try example 2. The first thing I want you to do is plot your points on the coordinate planes and sketch your parallelogram. Find the slope of each side. And then to finish, find the slopes of the diagonals. With the slopes of all of the sides and the slopes of the diagonals, you will be able to determine if it is a rectangle, a rhombus, a square, or a parallelogram. So go ahead and pause the video, try example 2. Once you are finished or you get stuck, hit play and I'll go through the problem with you. Okay, in example 2, very first thing I did was I plotted my 4 points L, I, F, and E. So I can see that my 4 sides are LI, IF, FE, and EL. So what I had to do then was find the slope of each of the 4 sides using the given coordinate points. I found the slope of LI to be 4, and the side opposite is FE. That is also 4. And sides IF and LE had slopes of 1/4. Okay, so again, because the opposite slopes are the same, we know that both pair of opposite sides are parallel to each other. So we know we have a parallelogram. Now, the next thing we need to do is compare consecutive slopes to see if they're perpendicular. So LI has a slope of 4, and LE has a slope of 1/4. Those are reciprocals, but they have the same sign, not different signs. That means the sides are not perpendicular. Which means it cannot be a rectangle and it cannot be a square because the sides are not perpendicular. So I am now choosing between a parallelogram or a rhombus. Okay, that's the question. So I'm going to find the slopes of the diagonals. My diagonals are LF and IE. The slope of LF is I, and the slope of IE is -1. Now, these slopes are opposite reciprocals, okay? If I want to make these a fraction, I can put them over 1. They have been flipped, and the sign is the opposite. So here the diagonals are perpendicular. Therefore, this figure must be a rhombus because a rhombus has diagonals that are perpendicular. Okay, let's turn the page and look at example number 3. This is problem number 1. It says use the distance formula to determine if A, B, C, D is a parallelogram. Okay, just as I did before, I plotted my points. Okay, so my points are A, B, C, D, A, B, C, and D. Now, we're going to use the distance formula to determine if it's a parallelogram, and we know that one of the properties is that parallelograms have opposite sides congruent. So if the opposite sides are congruent to each other or the same length, then I know I must have a parallelogram. So I am using the distance formula to find the length of each side of my parallelogram. Remember, the distance formula is D equals the square root of x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. Okay, so what I'm going to do, start with side AB. And I'm going to use the coordinate points for AB, plug it into the distance formula, and I see that I get a length of radical 26. I could plug that into my calculator and get a decimal, but that's extra work for the purpose of this. We just want to see that what's under the radical is the same. Okay. Next, I found the length of side BC, and I found that to be radical 13. Next, I found the length of side CD, which I found to be the square root of 26. And last, I found the length of side AD, which is the square root of 13. Okay. Now, because opposite sides have the same length, then yes, ABCD is a parallelogram.